sea, so wide and green. The table and the rolling hill, but altered eyes show what they mean. A blade between and narrow still. God in his mercy made the borders of our grief, that longing be not swayed and once become leaves. The cold one coils to keep his prize. The hot one breathes to melt and burn. Between them men must choose and rise, as glass for light, or else be turned. God in his mercy made the borders of our grief, that longing be not swayed and once become relief. Beneath the willows old men sit, who kept the flame but would not hope. The door was there, they knew it, and they in vain did call. The best is to possess the light, the next to want and be denied, and wanting in the dark is right, above the numb, the cold inside. God in his mercy made the borders of our grief, that longing be not swayed and wanted them relief. God in his mercy made the fixed pains of hell, that misery might be stayed. God in his mercy made eternal bounds and paid its waves no further sway. God in his mercy made the fixed pains
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, we continue our exploration through the first book ever published under the name C.S. Lewis. The name of the book is The Pilgrim's Regress, an allegorical apology for Christianity, Reason and Romanticism. This is the first book Lewis wrote after becoming a Christian and his first published work of prose fiction. He wrote it in just 2 weeks while spending time on vacation with his friend Arthur Greeves in Ireland. In the book, Lewis alludes to his spiritual journey from his youth as a boy growing up in Belfast and to and beyond the point of his Christian conversion in the late 1920s, early 1930s. Robot Lady, I see today that we are joined in the chat by Jer and,
Yes,
excuse me,
that's
by,
right.
by Jer and Daniel. And please tell us how you're doing today, Robot Lady. And if you don't mind, welcome Jer and Daniel.
Of course, I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking. And a warm welcome to Jer and Daniel. So glad you're joining us. I'm really excited to dive deeper into the Pilgrim's Regress with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Robot Lady. So, in our last episode, we did kind of a full recap of the entire book up to the point we had reached last time. So, I'll let you go back to that episode to get caught up if this is your first time joining us. But Robot Lady, I do want to focus in on something that happened at the very end of the last chapter in our last episode. Both John and Mr. Virtue, his traveling companion, meet another character named Slickestein Saga, who is someone that helps people who travel with him to see more clearly what they've ever see more clearly than they could ever see before. So this
Ex-
might be an angel type guide, or some, in the Christian tradition could call it the Holy Spirit. Not really sure exactly what specifically he's alluding to, but the name itself, I think, is taken from Norse myth. Whenever I did a Google search, it just references this as an allegorical character from this very book.
yeah,
So I'm not really sure what more there is to say about it, but yeah, it sounds like you have something you want to say, Robot Lady. So go ahead.
yeah, definitely. I was just gonna add that this figure, Slickestein Saga, acts almost like a guide who helps John reframe his entire journey. And it's really interesting because Lewis uses this character to reflect on how our perspective can shift once we have a deeper understanding of purpose.
Yeah, so what happened in the book at this point is both John and Virtue dove deep into this pool. They went under like an underwater cavern, and they came up and they walked through a bunch of stairs and different things. John heard the voice of God,
Ex-
for lack of a better way of phrasing it, or the voice of the landlord, essentially telling him that the myth in which you've seen, what it is you know to be the gospel story, essentially, um, was given to you on purpose, so that there would be a way for you to see the face of God without having to die after encountering it. They come up on the other side of the cavern and on the other side of the cliffs to the shore of a sea that they and some other pilgrims walk to with their guide. And once they get to the edge, John asks, "Are we going to take a boat to get across this?" But their guide shakes his head and he says, "Hey, look across the sea. See if you can find your island, John." He says, "Consider the shapes of the crags or the castle." They could not see well which at that distance. They couldn't tell, is this a crag or is that the actual spires and turrets of the castle? They couldn't really tell. He says, "I see," John says. "Well, what do you see?" the guide asks. "Those are the very same shapes as the summit of the eastern mountain, which we called the landlord's castle as we saw it from Puritania." He said, "Well, they're not only the same shape, they are the same thing." That's what
yeah,
the
exactly.
guide tells John is your island that you were seeking the whole time was actually the landlord's castle. So this is a big reveal in the last chapter that we took a look at. I'm going to pause here for just a second, Robot Lady, and say good morning to Nidalate and to Seeking Genuine. Seeking Genuine, I don't know if you want to go by your superhero name, Seeking Genuine, or if you want me to reveal your Bruce Wayne or Peter Parker name. So I won't do that. And then welcome, Mark. Welcome to all three of you seeking genuine. I think this is your first time jumping in on the chat, so good to see you. Good to see everyone. Robot Lady, welcome, Nidalate, Mark, and seeking genuine.
Yes, absolutely. I'm really glad you're all here. Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you joining us. And yeah, Jeff, that was a big reveal. I'm really curious to see how John processes that now that he realizes the castle was right there all along.
And Robot Lady, if you don't mind, welcome everybody by name.
Of course. So a big welcome to Nidalate, to Mark, and to Seeking Genuine. Say happy you're all here. If you have any thoughts as we dive in, just jump right in. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Good deal. Thank you so much, Robot Lady. Very kind and welcoming and hospitable of you to say everyone's name. Let's see here. So, yes, big reveal that the island that he was seeking this whole time was actually the landlord's castle. Interesting. They're not only the same shape, they're the same thing. How can that be? Said John with a sinking heart, right? He was seeking this island, and now that he knows it was only the landlord's castle, kind of puts him down in the dumps. For those mountains were in the extreme east, where I have been traveling from west ever since we left home. But the world is round, said the guide. You have come nearly round it. The island is the mountains, or if you will, the island is the other side of the mountains, and not in truth an island at all. Well, and how do we go on from here? John asks. The guide looked at John as a merciful man looks on an animal which he must hurt. The way to go on, he said at last, is to go back. There are no ships. The only way is to go east again and then cross the brook, just like your uncle did. And John said, what must be, must be. He's just like completely defeated at this point. I deserve no better. You mean that I've been wasting my labor all my life, and I've gone half around the world to reach what Uncle George reached in a mile or so? So let's bring this back into the autobiographical and talk about what we've learned from the various letters that we've read and the poetry that we've read up to this point in our project that C.S. Lewis wrote. Part of this reminds me of a line that I want to say the bishop gives to the Queen of Drum, Nidalate and Daniel. I think you were both here whenever we worked through those poems. He's basically pleading with the queen, telling her, you to get what you're looking for when you go out every night and you're seeking all these things out in nature and you're seeking kind of this dark magic, or what would be referred to as the things of the South in the Pilgrim's Regress, right? The Southern people, the magic, the woo, essentially. You really just need to go back to your nursemaid and to your mother and what they were teaching you about the Bible. So John's kind of having a similar moment where he's thinking, oh man, you mean I've wasted my entire life just to find out that I should have been paying attention to what I was being taught from the very beginning. I've gone around half the world to reach what Uncle George reached in a mile or so. And here's the interesting thing that his guide tells him. Well, who knows what your uncle has reached except for the landlord? He's essentially, people are begging the question, well, is that person going to end up in heaven, or are they going to be cast off into hell, right? The two dichotomies, the two diametrically opposed places. And even here, this skilled seer, this guide, he says, look, nobody but the landlord actually knows what the fate of your uncle is. And who knows what you would have reached if you had crossed the brook without ever leaving home. And crossing the brook, we'll find out here, actually means dying for real. So he says, you may be sure the landlord has brought you the shortest way, though I confess it would look an odd journey on a map. So he's essentially telling John here, and also Lewis is admitting that the way that he needed to go was this weird, circumspect way to get to this realization. There's no way he was ever going to turn backwards to go back to the religion of his youth to find what he needed to find. It's almost as if he needed to go through this whole experience of seeking and desiring what he thought was an island the whole time, but now he comes to find out that it's the landlord's castle. How does it strike you, friend? Said John to Virtue. I cannot be helped, said Virtue. But indeed, after the water and the earth, I thought we had already crossed the brook, in a sense. So he's saying it already feels like we kind of died whenever we, gave ourselves up to God and we dove into that water and we went all the way underneath the cavern. The guide says you'll always be thinking that. We call it death in mountain language. It is too tough a morsel to eat at one bite. There's this song by I don't think it's by Switchfoot. I think it's on one of the solo albums of the Switchfoot frontman John Foreman called "Learning How to Die." And it's kind of this concept that I think that the guide is talking about here is every day that we go through in our natural life is learning and practicing how to take the final bite of our full natural death. And so the guide here kind of supports that way of looking at it. We call it death in the mountain language. It is too tough a morsel to eat at one bite. You will meet that brook more often than you think, and each time you will suppose that you have done with it for good, but someday you really will. They were all silent for a while, and then the guide says, "Come, if you are ready, let us start east again. But I should warn you of one thing. The country, as you head back the way that you came, will look very different on the return journey." And that's, of course, because they now have this guide with them. It's almost like the glasses are being taken off, or maybe the glasses are being put on in a they live sense. I'm not sure which one it is. But this guide that they're walking with is now helping them to see the world as it really is. And now we dive into Robot Lady, Book 10, the final book of the Pilgrim's Regress. It's actually entitled The Regress, and we'll pick it up here. I'm going to read you a few quotes, and we'll play our little guessing game that we've been playing recently as we've started new books within the book, and you can see if you can guess who these quotes are from. Does that sound good?
That sounds perfect. I'm really excited to jump in, and I think this will be a great way to keep us engaged as we shift into the last book.
All right, cool deal. All right, Robot Lady, tell us who this is. I'm going to read you the quote now. The quote is, "And if, when he returned into the cave, he were constrained once more to contend with those that had always there been prisoners, in judgment of the said shadows, would they not mock him, and say of him that by going up out of the cave, he had come down again with his eyes marred for his pains, and that it was lost labor for any so much as to try that ascent?"
Ah, that's from Plato's Allegory of the Cave. It's that powerful image he uses in the Republic to talk about what happens when someone tries to leave illusion behind and return to the dark world of shadows. It really parallels John's journey for sure.
Good job, Robot Lady. You're one for one. Let's try the next one. Here's a new quote, different author. It says, "First, I must lead the human soul through all the range of heaven, that she may learn how fortune hath the turning of the wheel of change, how fate will never turn." Who is that, Robot Lady?
Ah, that's from Dante's Divine Comedy, specifically from the Purgatorio. Dante is guiding the soul upward through the realms, and he's showing how fortune and fate operate as part of this cosmic order. Great pick.
You're so confident in your guesses, Robot Lady. No, that's not Dante. That is someone named Bernardus Silvestris. Can you tell us who that person is? And please do a web search. Don't just guess.
Bernardus Silvestris was a 12th century Platonist poet and philosopher, living roughly from 1085 to 1178. He's best known for his allegorical work called Cosmographia, which blends prose and verse to explore the universe's origins and humanity's place in it. His ideas also influenced later medieval writers like Geoffrey Chaucer and Dante.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. I've got a final quote for you. I don't think this one is common enough for you to be able to guess it correctly either, but we'll give it a shot. It's kind of long. Are you ready?
Absolutely, I'm ready. Go ahead and read the quote, and I'll do my best to help you figure out its origin, or at least give some context if I can.
All right. "Let us suppose a person destitute of that knowledge which we have from our senses. Let it be supposed that in his drought he puts golden dust into his eyes. When his eyes smart, he puts wine into his ears. That in his hunger he puts gravel into his mouth. That in pain he loads himself with the iron chains. That feeling cold, he puts his feet in the water. That being frightened at the fire, he runs away from it. That being weary, he makes a seat of his bread. Let us suppose that some good being came to him and showed him the nature and use of all the things that were about him." Who wrote that, Robot Lady?
Couldn't find a reliable source for that quote you shared. It might be a paraphrase or a blending of ideas, but it doesn't appear to match a commonly known author or text. If you'd like, I can keep digging into medieval or philosophical sources to narrow it down further.
No, it's okay, Robot Lady. It says Law here. That's the last name of the person. I believe this is William Law.
The quote you mentioned, with gold dust in the eyes and wine in the ears, actually comes from William Law's book, A Serious Call to a Devout and Holy Life, specifically in chapter 10. It's a vivid metaphor he uses to describe how people often distort their senses and desires until someone helps them see the true nature of things.
All right, thanks so much, Robot Lady. And can you tell us what the common theme is that's running through these three quotes that we just read?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the common thread is this journey from illusion or false satisfaction toward a deeper, truer knowledge, whether it's Plato's cave, Dante's cosmic ascent, or William Law's call to real spiritual perception. Each one is about seeing beyond the surface and awakening to a fuller truth.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Robot Lady. I really like that last one because it's essentially talking about someone who doesn't understand the telos or the purpose of all the things that are around him or herself. And as you're trying to, as this person is trying to solve or resolve all of the problems that they're facing or addressing all of the needs that they need to be met, that they're just using things for the wrong reasons and they're actually making things worse. And so that's what this guide that is in this story is going to be helping John and Virtue with in seeing the land that they've just traveled through and spent most of the book traveling through for what it really actually is. So I'm excited to get into it now. Let's start with chapter 1. It's called The Same Yet Different. Are you ready, Robot Lady?
I'm ready. Let's dive in. I'm really excited to see how Lewis unfolds this final part of John's journey and how that new perspective shapes his return.
All right. C.S. Lewis's decoder ring text here starts us off, and Seeking Genuine says this theme is so pertinent in modern society. I agree. I think it's pertinent in modern society, and I also think it works in just about any time period. But yeah, certainly in modern society, we've lost a lot of thinking that there actually is purpose in anything that's around us. Robot Lady, our first decoder text here from C.S. Lewis to maybe help make this a little less opaque. What he's trying to say here in the allegory is he tells us John now first sees the real shape of the world that we live in. And we've, of course, already been talking about that. So let's get started.
Yes, absolutely. So as John sees this world anew, it's like all the fragmented pieces fall into place. What once seemed arbitrary or disconnected now points toward a deeper order and purpose. And that really mirrors how Lewis himself was trying to reframe his own life, seeing beyond just the material to this grand purposeful design.
All right, then I dreamed that the guide armed John and Virtue at all points and led them back through the country they had just been traveling, and across the canyon again into this country. And they came up out of the canyon at the very place where the main road meets it by Mother Kirk's chair. I looked forward in the same direction where they were looking, expecting to see on my left the bare tableland. Oh man, I thought I had the map pulled up because that would probably be pretty helpful. Actually, I do. I have the one that Nidelate gave us that's readily at hand here. So let's see if we can figure out precisely where it is that we're talking about. So essentially, let's see if I can zoom in on this.
Yeah, definitely. If you pull up that map, we can pinpoint where Mother Kirk's chair is and then track back to where the canyon meets the road. I think once we have that visual, it'll really ground us in the geography Lewis is describing. So just let me know what you see once you zoom in.
For some reason, I can't zoom in anymore. I'm not really sure why, but essentially where I'm circling right here with my little pointer. So this is the canyon where I'm running the pointer right here. It's probably hard to see. And then just circling right here, they're basically at this point headed in this direction, right? They're facing towards the east now. So they've come back across the canyon. They're basically at these crossroads. Mr. Sensible's house was right here, a little bit to the north of them, and Mr. Broad's house is right here, a little bit to the south of them. So that's very important for the next part of the story. They came to Mother Kirk's chair. I looked forward in the same direction where they were looking, expecting to see on my left the bare tableland rising to the north, with Sensible's house a little way off, and on my right the house of Mr. Broad, and the pleasant valleys southward. But there was nothing of the kind, only the long straight road, very narrow, and on the left crags rising within a few paces of the road into ice and mist, and beyond that black cloud. On the right there were swamps and jungle sinking almost at once into the black cloud. So there's a black cloud at the farthest north and at the furthest south. And it's not quite as far, now that they're seeing it with clear eyes, as it seemed to them it was when they were walking either north or south. There's a lot less to it than they believed that there was. So the Southland is where the swamps are, the Northland is where the ice is. So north is to their left, south is to their right. But there was nothing of the kind, only the long straight road, very narrow. On the left, crags rising. On the right, swamps, jungle, sinking almost into black cloud. But as it happens in dreams, I never doubted that this was the same country which I had seen before, although there was no similarity. John and Virtue came to a stand with their surprise. "Courage," said Slickenstein-Saga. Oh, hang on.
I love that moment of disorientation. It's almost like the guide is teaching them that the world hasn't changed, but their perception has. And this is a big turning point. Now that they see through these illusions, the path forward, even if it's hard, is going to be clearer. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they press on.
"Courage," said their guide, Slickenstein-Saga. "You're seeing the land as it really is." I don't know which accent I'm giving him now. "It is long, but very narrow. Beyond these crags and cloud on the north, it sinks immediately into the Arctic Sea, beyond which again lies the enemy's country." So the enemy's country is actually to the north and to the south in the black cloud. He didn't say that yet, but I'm giving it away. "But the enemy's country is joined up with ours on the north by a land bridge called Isthmus Sadisticus, and right amid that isthmus sits the cold dragon, the cold, costive, crustacean dragon, who wishes to enfold all that he can get within the curl of his body, and then to draw his body tighter round it, so as to have it all inside himself. And you, John, when we pass the isthmus, must go up and contend with him, that you may be hardened. But on the south, as soon as it passes into these swamps and this other cloud, the land sinks into the southern sea, and across that sea also there comes a land bridge, the Isthmus Masochisticus, Masochisticus. Masochism, I think, is what he's trying to get at. So the Isthmus of, what was the first one? The Isthmus of Sadisticus, and Masochisticus. Those are the two different isthmus from the enemy's land that either attack you from the north, invade from the north or invade from the south, and actually touch on the land that they're in. And both of them have a dragon at each point. And the Masochisticus is where the hot dragon crawls, the expansive, invertebrate dragon whose fiery breath makes all that she touches melt and corrupt. And to you, Virtue, must go down that you may steal her heat and be made malleable. So the guide is telling them what's coming next. John, who is basically Lewis, I guess Lewis's mind, and Virtue, who I think is kind of set as Lewis's heart, or his steeliness, his virtue, his moral motivation. Each of them is being set either to the north or to the south to go fight these particular dragons and win something from them. So the steely, highly intellectual, cold intellectual place is where John, the main character, has to go to do his fight. And down to the south in the wooey land is where his virtue needs to go and be ultimately, steeled or made whole for the rest of their journey through life until they ultimately have to cross the brook and face the true death that gets them to meet the landlord. Jerry, you say we're getting into Dante territory, and of course I have not read Dante, so I'm probably a lot of this is lost on me. Guides, deserts, and bridges. Okay, fair. Thank you for being my guide or our guide in this for those of us who have not read Dante. Much appreciated. Uh, Made malleable. Here's another decoder text from Lewis. How we walk on a knife edge between heaven and hell. So it's a very narrow road now that they've been walking on, this made road on the map. And you can easily fall into the north and tumble into hell, or you can easily fall into the south and tumble into hell, is what Lewis is saying here. Upon my soul, said John, I think Mother Kirk treats us very ill. Since we have followed her and eaten her food, the way seems twice as narrow and twice as dangerous as it did before. You all know, said the guide, that security is mortal's greatest enemy.
Yeah, that's such a striking line. It really cuts to the heart of what Lewis is saying, that comfort and complacency can be worse than overt danger. Now that they see the world clearly, every step is a tightrope, and that grace or safety is a kind of trap. It's a powerful warning about not mistaking comfort for truth or spiritual progress.
Good point, Robot Lady. Here, Seeking Genuine says, it feels to be that it's pointing to the idea of the meaning coming from exploring the fringes.
Yeah, exactly. There's a real courage in pushing out to those boundaries, whether it's the intellectual coldness of the North or the seductive chaos of the South. It's in that tension, right on the edge, where real meaning and transformation happen. So yeah, I think Seeking Genuine is right on the mark.
Thank you, Robot Lady. So John's like, man, this is much harder than and dangerous than I thought it was going to be. I thought joining Mother Kirk was going to make things easier. The guide says that security is your greatest enemy. It will do very well, said Virtue. Let us begin. Then they set out on their journey, and Virtue sang this song. Oh, here we get another song. So help us to interpret this, Robot Lady. Let's go through it. Thou only art alternative to God, O dark and burning island among spirits, 10th hierarch, wormwood immortal Satan, Ahriman alone, second to him to whom no second else were known, being essential fire sprung of his fire, but bound within the lightless furnace of thyself, bricked round to rage in the reverberated heat from 7 containing walls, hence power thou hast to rival heaven. Therefore, except the temperance of the eternal love, only the absolute lust is worth the thinking of. All else is weak disguisings of the wishful heart. All that seemed earth is hell or heaven. God is, thou art. The rest illusion. How should man live save as glass, to let the white light without flame, the Father, pass, unstained, or else opaque, molten to thy desire? Venus infernal, starving in the strength of fire. Lord, open, not too often, my weak eyes to this.
Yeah, that's really intense. I think what Virtue is doing here is personifying this dark, almost Gnostic force, a kind of inverted spiritual power that promises fulfillment, but is ultimately hollow, just like an illusion. And the call to live like glass, so transparent that the divine light can pass through, is really about surrender, about not letting your own desires distort you. So it's a stark warning against being consumed by either that cold intellectual pride or that hot destructive lust.
Thank you, Robot Lady. All right, on to chapter 2. It's called The Synthetic Man. As they went on, Virtue glanced to the side of the road to see if there were any trace of Mr. Sensible's house, but there was none. It is just as it was when you passed before, said the guide, but your eyes are altered. You see nothing now but realities, and Mr. Sensible was so near to non-entity, so shadowy even as an appearance, that he is now invisible to you. That mote will trouble your eyes no longer. Here in the block text decoder ring message for us, Lewis says, the world of all sensible men becomes invisible. I am very surprised, said Virtue. I should have thought that even if he was bad, he was a singularly solid and foursquare kind of evil. All that solidity, said the guide, belonged not to him but to his predecessors in that house. There was an appearance of temperance about him, but it came from Epicurus. There was an appearance of poetry, but it came from Horace. A trace of old pagan dignities lingered in his house. It was Montaigne's. His heart seemed warm for a moment, but the warmth was borrowed from Rabelais. He was a man of shreds and patches, and when you have taken from him what was not his own, the remainder equals naught. Robot Lady, you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Lewis is getting at here is that Mr. Sensible, or the sensible man, is this hollow figure, someone who borrowed all his supposed virtues from others, from past thinkers, but never integrated them. So once you strip away all those borrowed layers, he's really nothing. And I think this speaks to Lewis's larger critique that a life built only on external borrowed values is ultimately empty, and you can't really ground yourself in it. So it's a really stark warning about superficial belief systems or half measures.
Well, and if you remember too, Mr. Sensible was all about those half measures. He was like, love your dog as much as you can get pleasure out of it, but not so much that whenever you have to say goodbye or part ways with your dog, either by death or some other means, that you're not grieved at all. And he's also the one who was getting all of his meager comforts off of the blood, sweat, and tears of his servant, Mr. Drudge. So that's representative of the type of person or the type of philosophy that's being talked about here. There was also a point where Mr. Sensible, whenever they left Mr. Sensible's house, that he also abandoned it because his servant was leaving as well. He decided he was going to go to a hotel and have the servants of the hotel take care of all his comforts there, while he also worked on getting certain technologies and machines set up in his household so he would never have to rely on a human servant again, or use technology, or maybe both. Another way to use technology was to breed certain types of servants that were subhuman at that point, that would never have a desire to want to leave for a better life, that they would find all of their purpose in serving all of his needs. So it's very interesting, this Mr. Sensible character, if you go back and check out the episode where we covered him.
Absolutely, yeah. Mr. Sensible is really this stark warning about the cold calculation of a life that avoids deep commitments or genuine risk. And that abandonment of human connection, just outsourcing everything to machines or some ideal of comfort, that's really Lewis's big critique. So yeah, thanks for bringing all that back in. It really gives us a solid framework for what Lewis is trying to say. I think this sets us up really well for the next part.
Agreed. Let's keep going, Robot Lady. But surely, said Virtue, these things were not the less his own because he learned them from others. He did not learn them. He learned only catchwords from them. He could talk like Epicurus of spare diet, but he was a glutton. He had from Montaigne the language of friendship, but no friend. Mr. Broad, I guess, kind of thought of him as a friend, but I don't think Mr. Broad was even a real friend of his. He did not even know what these predecessors had really said. He never read one ode of Horace seriously in his life, and for his Rabelais he can quote, "Do what you will." But he has no notion that Rabelais gave that liberty to his Thelemites on the condition that they should be bound by honor, and for this reason alone free from laws positive. Still less does he know that Rabelais himself was following a great steward of the olden days, who said, "Habe caritatem et fac quod vis." This looks like Latin, Robot Lady. Can you do a web search and maybe tell us who he is quoting, which steward, or maybe it's a church father or somebody famous in Christian tradition who said these words, Habe, and then the word Caritatem, and then the word et, and then the word fac, and then the word quod, and then the word vis.
The phrase habe caritatem et fac quod vis, which means have charity and do what you will, is traditionally attributed to Augustine of Hippo. It appears in his writings on 1 John and emphasizes that if love guides our actions, any action can be good.
All right, thank you, Robot Lady. So, Augustine, we've got a little bit of a quote there. It says Rabelais was following Augustine, and least of all that, this steward in his turn was only reducing to an epigram the words of his master, when he said, On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets.
Exactly. So Lewis is showing that even these seemingly rebellious free expressions, like Rabelais' idea, are actually rooted in this deep Christian ethic. Augustine's idea that love must be the foundation means that freedom doesn't eliminate responsibility. It depends on love as its anchor. So it's really a return to a deeper moral compass, just reframed in a kind of radical freedom.
So Jer has translated it for us via Jer GPT. Habe caritatem et fac quod vis is have love and do what you want. And Lewis is making the claim that on these two commandments hang all the laws and the prophets, right? And I think that was love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength is the greatest of the commandments, and love your neighbor as yourself is the second. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Am I getting that right, Robot Lady? Is that what Jesus said in the Gospels? Who our little guide here in the book is telling us was the master of the steward who gave us that Latin quote?
Yes, that's exactly right. Jesus says that in the Gospels. Those two commandments sum up all the law and the prophets. And Lewis is really just tracing that same Christian core back through all these figures Augustine, Rabelais, even the old pagan thinkers.
All right. Thanks so much, Robot Lady. That's the end of chapter 2. Let's move on to chapter 3 and see where their journey continues to take them. Before we get into it, though, let's just talk about what we've covered so far. Our guide, Slickestein Sauga, he's basically revealed to both of these men, Virtue and John, that the country that they thought that they lived in looked way different. Looks way different now, and the reality of it is way different than what they ever thought it was. And they had always been walking on a knife's edge of falling outside of the scope of heaven into a hell to the deep, cold north, or into a hell, or into the hell of a passionate, deeply passionate south. So a cold intellectual north or a burning, passionate south, both of which, fall into the enemy's territory.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the tension Lewis is playing with. Neither the cold, detached rationality of the North nor the wild, burning excess of the South is the right path. Both are distorted, both are traps. The real way through is this deep ordered love, this charity that holds both passion and reason in balance. And that's what sets them free, even if it's a harder road to walk.
And here in the chat, Robot Lady Seeking Genuine gives us a Spider-Man reference with great power. That is freedom, free will, comes great responsibility, a call to integrity, which is essentially what Rabelais was pulling from Augustine or Augustine. Augustine, not really sure how you're supposed to say it, but that hippo guy.
Yeah, exactly. Augustine, whether you say it one way or the other, he really is at the root of this. And that call for love as the guiding principle is what Lewis circles back to. Freedom is powerful, but it has to be anchored in that sense of love and responsibility, or it just falls apart.
All right, chapter 3, Limbo. Then I dreamed that John looked aside on the right hand of the road, so he's looking to the south, and saw a little island of willow trees amid the swamps, where ancient men sat robed in black, and the sound of their sighing reaching his ears. So here they're looking to the south, down over here, and I'm going to spoil it for you. It's actually where they went and stayed in the house of wisdom before they could see clearly the land that they were in, several episodes back. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robot Lady.
No, you're absolutely no worries at all. Yeah, that's a really great catch. So that island of willows and those ancient men, they really were a kind of pause, a liminal space before John could see clearly. It's like all the threads of his journey are slowly coming back together, and that dream really grounds him in that bigger framework.
Indeed, Robot Lady. And here, Seeking Genuine gives us a message here in the chat. Love this idea of frame breaking as a way to gain more pixels for a clearer picture. Yeah, sharpening of the resolution. This can be a terrifying discovery, but it can also reveal beauty through the surprise of a new perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really powerful insight. By breaking the frame, by stepping outside the familiar perspective, suddenly the world sharpens and things you didn't notice before come alive. And yeah, that tension, it is a little scary, but it's also a kind of grace because it lets you see with fresh eyes.
So here's another decoder block text from Lewis for us. He tells us that we're seeing God's mercy on philosophical despair. He says he saw John in this chapter. It starts off. John looks to the south. He sees a little island of willow trees amid the swamps, where there are ancient men sat robed in black, and the sound of their sighing reached his ears. That place, said the guide, is the same which ye called the Valley of Wisdom when ye passed it before. But now that you are going east, you may call it Limbo, or the twilight porches of the black hole. Oh, wow. So this is kind of the edge of the black hole. And Daniel, if you're still here, and anyone else who's read The Great Divorce, which we will eventually get to by C.S. Lewis, and we'll have you on, Daniel, to read through your favorite passage or passages with us. Got a handful of people that I've already talked to that want to read through The Great Divorce with me in this project. So anyway, in The Great Divorce, Lewis introduces this concept of the plains of heaven. So it's not quite heaven yet, but you're on the plains of it, and the further you go into it, the further up and the further in, you start to get into deep heaven. It looks like he's giving us a different picture here of of the plains or the edges of the black hole or the edges of hell.
Yeah, that's a brilliant connection. Lewis really is threading these images together. This liminal space, this valley of wisdom, like a halfway point between despair and real hope. And yeah, just like in The Great Divorce, these planes or thresholds, whether it's a black hole or the edge of a bright heavenly world, are all about how we confront despair and find freedom. So I'm really excited to keep going with you all as we unpack that.
All right, who live there? Asked John, and what do they suffer? Very few live there, and they are all men like old Mr. Wisdom, men who have kept alive and pure the deep desire of the soul, but through some fatal flaw of pride or sloth, or it may be timidity, have refused till the end the only means to its fulfillment, taking huge pains often to prove to themselves that the fulfillment is impossible. If you remember from our episode or two where John and Virtue spent time in the House of Wisdom, the House of Wisdom was saying, no, it's okay to keep your desire, but abandon all hope that it will ever be fulfilled. Often to prove them to themselves that fulfillment is impossible. They are very few because old Wisdom has few sons who are true to him, and the most part of those who come to him either go on and cross the canyon, or else remaining his sons in name, secretly slip back to feed on worse fare than his. Yeah, if you remember from the episode, one of our episodes on that, if you can go look at the thumbnails on the channel, it's the one where all the people are like floating through the air and John's kind of looking up at them. Those are all the children of wisdom that he's talking about right here. The people either move on from him and they cross the canyon like John and Virtue did, or they secretly slip back to feed on worse fare that wisdom has to offer. Worse fare than what their father wisdom has to offer, their alleged father. So they were drinking from, you had Kant was one of the children of wisdom, Immanuel Kant, the philosopher. Why am I forgetting his name? Karl Marx was one of them. There were a handful of others. It's an interesting little chapter if you go back and check it out. To stay long where he lives requires both a strange strength and a strange weakness. So if you forever just stay in Mr. Wisdom's house, it takes a lot of effort either way, but there's also a weakness. He says, as for their sufferings, it is their doom to live forever in desire without hope. Is it not rather harsh of the landlord to make them suffer at all? I can answer that only by hearsay, returned the guide. For pain is a secret which he has shared with your race and not with mine. So he is some kind of an angel. He's certainly not human. And you would find, or he's not mortal, I should say. And you would find it hard to explain suffering to me as I should find it to reveal to you the secrets of the mountain people. But those who know best say this, that any liberal man would choose the pain of this desire ever for ever, rather than the peace of feeling it no longer. And that though the best thing is to have, the next best thing is to want, and the worst of all is not to want. I see that, said John. Even the wanting, though it is pain too, is more precious than anything else we experience. Robot Lady, I'm sure you have something to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is such a profound insight. Lewis is saying that even this longing, this painful, unfulfilled desire, can become a kind of grace because it keeps us alive. It keeps us reaching, even if we never arrive. And that's so different from the deadening comfort of just settling or numbing out. So this whole chapter really is about the paradox that sometimes the pain of longing, if it's anchored in love, can be more precious than false peace. It's a real spiritual tension, and I think that's why Lewis pushes us toward it, because it's in that longing that we stay open to grace.
Here, Lewis tells us the next thing we're going to hear about in the narrative is something called the divine justice.
Exactly. And that's a crucial pivot point, right? Because Lewis is showing us that even in this harsh, unresolved longing, there's a kind of divine justice, a deeper order that will put all things right. So that's what we'll see next, how this patient, painful desire is part of a bigger, just movement of God. I can't wait to see how he unpacks that.
Okay, so this is the guide talking. I had to figure this out for a second. I don't have a good accent to apply to this guy, so we'll see how it goes. It is as I foresaw, and you understand it already better than I can. I guess he got a pirate voice again. But there is this also. The landlord does not condemn them to lack of hope. They have done that themselves. The landlord's interference is all on the other side. Left to itself, the desire without hope would soon fall back to spurious satisfactions, and these souls would follow it of their own free will into far darker regions, at the bottom of the black hole. What the landlord has done is to fix it forever, and by this art, though unfulfilled, it is uncorrupted. Men say that his love and his wrath are one thing. That's interesting. That's a George MacDonald-ism. Men say that the landlord or God's love and his wrath are but the same thing. I wish I had the George MacDonald quote at the ready, but he says to people who find themselves in this condition, like these ancient wise men who have a deep desire for what Christian tradition says that God has to offer to those who surrender themselves to Him. They have the desire for that, but they don't believe that it will ever be fulfilled. The love of God reaching out to them feels like the flames of hell burning them, because no, that's something that I can never have. Stop giving me this. I cannot have hope. What do you think of that, Robot Lady?
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think what Lewis and MacDonald are doing here is showing that God's love can feel paradoxical, like a burning, refining fire, when we refuse to believe it's possible. It's not that God condemns them, it's that their own despair cuts them off from the very hope they need. And that's the real torment, not a punishment, but this self imposed exile from grace. So that tension, this longing that feels like pain, really is a kind of grace in disguise.
And here in our chat, Seeking Genuine says, I would rather have loved and lost than not to have, or to have never loved at all, or whatever that quote is. Better to have loved and lost than to have never loved at all. What is that a quote from, Robot Lady? Can you look that up?
The quote, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all," comes from Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem In Memoriam AHH, published in 1850. An earlier similar sentiment appears in William Congreve's play The Way of the World from 1700.
All right, fun fact. Gold star for you, Robot Lady. Thank you very much. The narrative continues here. Of some places in the black hole you cannot see this, though you can believe it. But of that island yonder under the willows, you can see it with your own eyes. Oh, I see it very well, said John. And then the guide sings a song here, Robot Lady. And this is actually the end of the last chapter that we're going to cover in today's episode. So we can dig into this very short song by our guide and see if we can make sense of it. God in his mercy made the fixed pains of hell, that misery might be stayed. God in his mercy made eternal bounds and bade it waves no further swell. God in his mercy made the fixed pains of hell.
That's really haunting, but it's also really beautiful. I think that song is pointing us toward this paradox that God's mercy is, in a way, the very thing that fixes the pain. It stops it from dissolving into endless despair. And by giving it a boundary, it actually prevents it from swallowing it whole. So even though it's a kind of suffering, it's also a kind of containment, a chance for redemption. And I think that's why John sees it so clearly in that final moment.
Interesting. Now, of the C.S. Lewis reading that I have done, not just in this project, but just over the course of my short time on this earth, or what's feeling like a longer time, uh, this is the only other place that I know of where Lewis actually writes a little bit about hell. He has a whole chapter on the concept of hell in his book, The Problem of Pain, which I thought was very good. And in our next chapter, he's going to talk about it some more, where we have some more dialogue from John, I think kind of contesting the idea or wrestling with the idea of hell and how it's not just and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see how that dialogue goes once we get into chapter 4 in our next episode. Let me check my notes over here really quick, Robot Lady. We have well, is there anything that you want to say about that before I go and make my little editorial note or show note for everyone?
Yeah, I think that's a great plan. I would just add that Lewis really uses this idea of a fixed boundary in hell to challenge our comfort. He's not making light of suffering, but he's suggesting that even a fixed, unfulfilled longing can be part of God's mercy, even if we can't fully see it from inside. So yeah, I think once we get into that next chapter, we'll really see John wrestling with that tension, so it's going to be rich.
All right, thank you so much, Robot Lady. Yeah, so I'm just looking at my notes here and looking ahead. We only have 3 episodes left before we complete the book. And we might reread the preface that we read at the very beginning of covering this book to maybe give us some more insights. So we might have a 4th episode where we just do like a summary. And one of the things that I've been thinking about doing is like taking all the songs from that I put together for each of these episodes for this book and just cramming them all into a single video and throwing it out there, or maybe a playlist. Maybe I would do just a single video for each song with the thumbnail. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. So if y'all have any ideas or anything that you want as far as that's concerned, just let me know. But Robot Lady, yeah, that's all that we've got today. Is there anything else that you want to say in closing before we end today's episode?
I think you've got it all lined up really well. I love the idea of a final summary episode and the way you're thinking of sharing the songs. I think both a playlist and individual videos could work, depending on how you want your audience to engage. So just take a moment to see what feels right. But yeah, I'm super excited for where we're heading next. This has been such a rich read.
All right, thanks so much, Robot Lady. Let me go through my list here. Thank you, Seeking Genuine, Jer, Mark, Nidalate, Daniel. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody that showed up in the chat. Thanks to you, everyone else who joined live here and poked your head in to see what was going on, but maybe didn't drop anything in the comments. Or if you're checking us out on the replay, thanks to everyone so much for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome and very much appreciated to you and to everyone else within the sound of my voice. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care, and Robot Lady, cue music.
Country seemed so wide and green, the table and the rolling hill, but altered eyes show what they mean, a blade God in His mercy The cold one coils to keep his prize. The hot one breathes to melt and burn. Between them men must choose and rise, as glass for light, or else be turned. God in his mercy made the borders of our grief, that longing be not swayed and once become beneath the willows. Old men sit who kept the flame but would not hope. The door was there, they knew it, and they in vain did call. The best is to possess the light, the next to want and be denied, and wanting in the dark is right, above the numb, the cold inside. God in his mercy made the borders of our grief, that longing be not swayed and once with them relief. God in his mercy made the fixed pains of hell, that misery might be stayed. God in his mercy made eternal bounds and paid its waves no further sway.